once Pandora is more densely populated by new plants and animals, would there be a possibility of maybe releasing some kind of like bestiary book?
You know, that is all the stuff. It's interesting. You know, truth be told, next week we have a meeting with our publishing side of partners at Fox to discuss exactly the different type of opportunities. And you know what we're really working on, and you know, as I don't know if Kathy talked about this also, you know, as Jim was meeting with the writers, we had a novelist in the room with the writers, Stephen Gould, who was with them for 5 months. And the idea is that he's going to write a series of novels, 4 of them, starting with the first film. But these novels are going to be novels on their own, and we want the movies to feel like adaptations of the books and not as if they were novelizations of the films. So this breadth of knowledge and background we're going to have, and the artwork that we've already generated is going to give us the opportunity not just to put out the type of book you're talking about, but to also give the answer behind the questions of why do these creatures exist, how do they live, all of those things, because that's what we need to work and how we do things. And I remember, and I give a lot of credit to Neville Page. On the first film, there's a little insect called the hellfire wasp. You see it eating out of the nectars of the flowers with the dire horses. Well, Neville didn't just design that, but he also did an illustration how 5 of them would rest on a tree, and they would form the shape of a flower, and that was how they would protect themselves. So they wouldn't just be isolated alone. And I think that's what, you know, the artists are challenged with, is don't give us art because it's cool. Right. Give us designs and ideas and concepts that you can support in the background and the philosophy of the science of Avatar. So.
That's great because, well, to be honest, I picked up the Star Wars bestiary and it didn't have any of that.
Well, but it's interesting that you mentioned Star Wars, because obviously we, being in this business, are thoughtful about what has been done with Star Wars, what has been done with Harry Potter, what has been done with the kinds of story worlds that have really engaged fan bases and have been very broad in how they've thought about getting themselves out there and publishing and in other ancillary product kinds of programs. And our goal is to take the best learnings that we can from what has worked and not worked in those programs, and over time build the program for Avatar that is going to be really compelling and detailed and speak to this idea of Pandora as real. How do you treat Pandora as real? How do you allow people who want to really dig into the details to really dig into the details, because they're all there. And there's nothing more fun than getting to share with people all of the layers that go into thinking about creatures, characters, and environments for these films.
And for Jim, his process, his creative process, something has to make sense to him in the world that he's creating. A great example, going back to the first film, are the amp suits. Ty Rubin, who was designing those, couldn't just come up with the design and have shoulders do things without the mechanics behind the shoulders really working. So if you look at the detail of the design in the amp suit, those shoulders are on tracks, and they do. So that's how Jim thinks, and that's how Jim challenges these guys every day, and it ain't easy.
Yeah, I've worked on many films where just make it look cool is good enough, and this is absolutely not that type of film. And so it is a fun challenge, because you really, it's more about concepts and thinking than it is about illustrating, you know. And so it's.
Yeah, I think even with the characters, I think one of the neat things is that he'll come up and he'll look at something and he goes, "What's that?" And if the idea is to have already thought about what it is, and
or be really good at making it up on the fly.
Or, yeah, exactly.
The answer just can't be it's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
The answer has to be, here's how this culture lives. And because they live this way, that's the type of knife they would carry. Because when they're out foraging in the woods, they need that. They don't need a bigger one. Bigger ones that get caught on branches. Now it all starts to make sense.
Yeah.
So.
Right in the middle.
I'm interested in, you have this great environmental message. Another message that I've liked a whole lot about Avatar is the message of tolerance. And so I'm wondering about, I have a general part of this question, then some specific things. I'm wondering how you're willing in general to enforce tolerance and, well, not enforce, but address tolerance in the movies, and specifically things like sexual orientation, religion, race, and disability, things like that. So I'm wondering if any of the future movies will deal with that, or will feature that in any way, and if they will, my general question is if they will go further to promote tolerance.
Well, look, I think on a general answer, yes. When you say feature something, it always makes me nervous.
No, I don't.
No. I'm just saying, as we work on stuff creatively, when you push something to the forefront, I think it has much less of an impact than when you played in the background. So featuring things, I don't think will continue to exist. But that sense, I mean, I really see the future movies, again, not about Na'vi versus human, but it's about the choices you make. It's about good versus evil. It's about, are you a good Na'vi? Are you a bad Na'vi? Are you a good human? Are you a bad human? How do you become accepting of other people and their differences? So I think those things, those thematic themes are going to play out. And it's important for us because, those are universal themes. They are not American jingoistic themes. And as we make movies in today's world, we have to do it for a global audience. And we have to, attract people in and let them discover the types of things you're talking about and not be beaten over the head with it. Let it be a journey of discovery for them. And, we're really looking at this, and while each movie will complete itself as a story arc, and I say that Jim twice has done sequels, and I would argue that both times they at least lived up to, if more better than the first movies, but they were complete movies. So we have to do that, and some of our themes that we're weaving in are themes that are really going to take the full story arc to play out. But I think that's okay. And at the end of the day, as we talked about, we want to make movies that affect people and have an impact on their lives and how they see the world as they move forward. So.
Just, in the interest of disclosure, I don't like being beaten over the head with people exist. That's what I think, and that they
Well, look,
shouldn't be forced.
I'm going to use a movie, Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
I went to it. I enjoyed it. But they're preaching to the already converted. What you have to do is you have to, like the first Avatar does. It's, people might have heard me say this before. It begins and ends with Jake opening his eyes. So what we need to do is we need to get people coming in. They might think their eyes are open, but they're really not. And if through our films we could get them to open their eyes and see things differently, then we've been successful.
A little bit changing gears here, working a lot with in the virtual production environment, where you're not dependent on a lot of the factors that affect traditional filmmaking, weather, daylight. How does that compare? Devin, you worked on both, some virtual stuff and some live action. Is it easier or harder?
I think it would depend on who you ask. For me personally, I work much better living in my imagination, which performance capture is a great fit for me for that reason. But you'll talk to a lot of people that prefer to have the actual tangible, visible things in front of them. So it's really depends on who you're asking.
It's really, Sigourney Weaver had a great quote about this. She said, what we really do is make believe anyway. And that's an extension of this. So, and I think it's people who are not familiar, and I think you have a responsibility to communicate to people. To put a performer out in the volume and not explain to them clearly what they're reacting to, what the environment is, how it fits into the context of the story, not giving them those tools, those props. I think I said when I was up in Seattle that, we took our cast to the rainforest of Hawaii. And we actually rehearsed in the rainforest with our principal cast. and use that as sort of like a sense memory process for them to come back onto the stage and bring that into how they feel when the mud was sliding under their feet, when they actually bumped into a branch, all those things. So I think it's, you have to, as producers, as directors, you have to understand you're doing a different process, just like you would if you were doing a stage show, if you're doing a theater. You address it differently. If you think about theater, the actors are always playing out to the audience. They never have their back to the audience because it wouldn't work. So they're really playing to nothing also. We're actually giving them more than that because they get to see the environment through our process of virtual production.
I think each one presents different challenges. I think with the virtual production, especially on the first one, it was a lot of new technology, so a lot of things broke, and we had to figure it out as we went along. On a film set, a lot of this stuff is kind of established, but even Jim, when he's on the virtual production set, he's like, if I was on a live action set, I could just go move this light. But then when he's on a live action set, he's like, if I was on the virtual production set, I could just change the color of this light, and I wouldn't have to wait. So I think each one is kind of,
A lot of modern films use a pre-visualization process to lay out the film and the shots and stuff. How does your virtual production affect how that works?
Well, we don't ascribe to the idea of pre-visualization, and I'll tell you why. Because filmmaking is a journey of discovery. And in the pre-visual process, you're sitting there, you don't have the tools with you, you don't have the cast with you to interact with. You're doing it off of a stage. You can't find that shot. You can't have the actors react and play off of each other. At first when we went into Avatar, we talked about doing storyboards, we talked about doing all those things. But storyboards, again, are someone's interpretation of what they think you are going to do on the set. And you get out there, inevitably, you do something else. So while what we do on virtual production might look like pre-viz, we call it viz-viz. Because we work it to a point where it is what we want. It's not open for interpretation. And by definition, pre-viz is open to interpretation and changes in the moment. So we work not through an artist sitting at a desk, but through a filmmaker with a camera in their hands and create the template, the exact shots we want. And when we turn over material to Weta, it is not for them to change what we've done. It's for them to bring it to a photographic and emotive level.
And just to go a little bit further, we shot even the live action scenes on the virtual production set. So a lot of these sets that we saw when we went down to New Zealand, we had already been looking at for a couple of years, and it was very just cool and a little bit freaky to walk into these sets that have been meticulously built down to the pixel level of what we were seeing in the computer, and you're walking in, you already knew the whole set by heart. So all these sets were built based on the models and the virtual production sets.
And we use that process as a scouting process, not as a pre-visualization process. So we would scout the location. We would say, oh, look at that. That hallway needs to be longer because the dialogue scene takes longer to complete. Good thing we knew that before we went down and built the set. So it was our way of scouting sets before they were built to build it. But pre-visualization, when you define shots, when you define that, it's not something that works for us in our process.
I think also the difference is the level of filmmaker. When you have a confident filmmaker like Jim compared to other films where you may not. I think it's a very, very different part of it as well.
Right. I think if somebody needs pre-visualization as a tool to learn something, and that might be learning how they prefer to shoot the scene when they stage it when they get out there, or learning what needs to be built.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to build this for this effect and all that. With us doing everything digitally, we don't really have that situation.
And obviously planning stunts and stuff like that is
Right.
when it's useful, but other than that.
Carol Henry, any questions? So I don't think anybody met Carol yet. We have a couple new people. Carol Henry back there. Wave, Carol. Carol is our CFO and has been with us 22 years, Carol? She started when she was 21. Very exciting. And there's Robbie over there. Robbie is works in what we call our Sector 5 group. Sector 5 sort of comes from the True Lies days, like Omega Sector. We call them Sector 5, and that's really our production technology group. And whenever we need something done, it's amazing how they can come up with solutions. So that's Robbie. All right.
Gentleman in the white T-shirt had a question.
Yeah, with your virtual soundstage, are there any plans about using sort of newly developed technology to let the actors in on the computer elements in your rendering? Because obviously Jim has his virtual camera, but the actors don't have anything to react to.
We were talking about this about Glass, Google Glass or Oculus Rift.
Well, here's the issue. We give them the screens to react to. If we gave them Oculus Rift or something to wear on their heads, we are losing the window into their soul. Because the eyes are the window into the soul, and we're not capturing that. We're not shooting reference on that. We're not doing any of that stuff. I could see an opportunity where we've built an environment and we say to them, like we took them to the rainforests of Hawaii, hey, in pre-production, put these on, walk through the world, get a sense of this world, and bring it back as a sense memory process. But I also think those other tools down the road will be great opportunities for us to exploit in the best sense, to give other people the opportunity to do those type of things. When people really understand how those tools are utilized, to let people, if people can't go to Orlando, maybe there's a way to bring Pandora to them virtually.